Choose between us, the sisters said. The millionaire rancher replied, I love you both. The wind swept across the open fields with a sharpness that felt almost personal, carrying the echo of a sentence that would shatter everything that once felt simple. Choose between us, the sisters said, standing on opposite sides of the sunlit ranch courtyard, their voices trembling but firm. And there, in the glowing daylight spilling across the land he had built with his own hands, the millionaire rancher, Archer Hale, closed his eyes, fighting the weight of the moment. When he opened them, his voice cracked as he whispered the truth he had spent months denying. I love you both. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journey. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Archer Hale had never intended for love to become the most painful part of his life. He had spent years rebuilding himself after losing his parents and inheriting nothing but a dying piece of land. Through relentless work, countless sacrifices, and unshakable determination, he turned Hale Ranch into one of the most prosperous cattle and horse operations in the region. People admired him for his strength, envied his success, and often whispered about his handsome, rough-around-the-edges charm. But Archer was, at heart, a quiet man who wanted nothing more than peace and purpose. He didn't imagine that peace would be disrupted the day he met two sisters whose bond was unbreakable, until he stepped between it. The first time Archer saw Sienna Marlowe, she was leaning over a wounded foal at the summer veterinarian outreach clinic that set up near his ranch every year. Her gentle hands moved slowly, her soft voice calming even the wildest of creatures. Her brown hair tied into a messy knot, freckles across her sunlit cheeks, she looked like someone who carried warmth wherever she went. But what captivated him most was her compassion. She didn't see animals as work, she saw them as souls. Archer felt something shift inside him that day, a feeling he hadn't known in years. Later that afternoon, he met her older sister, Neria Marlowe. Where Sienna was softness, Neria was fire. Sharp-witted, confident, graceful in a completely different way. She was an equine nutritionist consulting for the same outreach program, and when she spoke, her eyes glowed with intelligence and certainty. She was striking, tall, poised, and elegant even in dusty boots, and Archer found himself drawn to her boldness just as strongly as he had been drawn to Sienna's sweetness. He didn't understand how two sisters could be so different yet equally captivating. The days that followed brought the three of them together more often than Archer expected. Sienna visited the ranch almost daily, checking on the recovered foal Archer had taken in. She filled the ranch house with laughter and stories, helping in the stables, cooking simple meals, and bringing life to places Archer hadn't realized had grown cold. Neria, on the other hand, challenged him, intellectually and emotionally. Her presence made him rethink decisions, question himself, and explore ideas he had never considered. She walked with confidence through the fields, showing him a world where strength didn't mean silence. Archer tried to keep his feelings buried, but the truth was simple, he had fallen for both of them. Though he fought it with guilt and confusion, he couldn't ignore the growing warmth between him and Sienna, nor the electric energy sparked by every conversation with Neria. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself it would fade. He told himself he could choose. But he never did. And that silence became the fire that ignited everything. As the summer turned to early autumn and the clinic neared its closing, tension began to ripple between the sisters, subtle at first, then sharper. Sienna grew quieter around Neria. Neria became impatient with Sienna's lingering stares at Archer. Their once constant laughter faded into uncomfortable pauses. Archer saw it but didn't want to face the truth, afraid of breaking the fragile balance they had created. Everything collapsed on a sun-bright afternoon when the three of them stood near the corral, the horses grazing peacefully, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Sienna's voice wavered as she asked him what he felt. She needed clarity, something real, something she could trust. Neria, always direct, demanded the truth with her arms crossed, her heart pounding visibly behind her stern expression. Archer tried to speak, but before he could, they spoke in unison. Choose between us. The words hit him with the force of a stampede. He wasn't ready. He wasn't strong enough. He wasn't prepared to break someone's heart, much less two hearts that had already endured so much in life. But running wasn't an option, lies weren't an option. So he spoke the truth he had feared most. I love you both. The silence afterward was suffocating. Sienna's eyes filled with quiet tears, while Neria's froze with disbelief. The sun burned overhead, making everything feel too bright, too exposed. And Archer hated himself more in that moment than he ever had before. Sienna stepped back first, her breath trembling, the gentleness that had always defined her now shattered. Her voice cracked as she said she needed space, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't look at the two people who had become the center of her emotional universe. Neria didn't cry, but the betrayal in her eyes was loud enough to echo across the fields. She told Archer that honesty didn't always heal, sometimes it cut deeper than lies. She walked away with stiff shoulders and a clenched jaw, refusing to let anyone see the breaking inside her. For days, the ranch felt empty, even though everything was still physically there. The horses moved with their usual grace, the workers carried out their duties, the sun rose and set like always, but Archer felt hollow. He spent long hours in the quietest corners of the ranch, wondering how he had caused so much heartbreak simply by being honest. He couldn't blame them for the pain. He couldn't blame them for needing distance. He could only blame himself for feeling too deeply for two people who didn't deserve this kind of suffering. But something unexpected happened, something that would change everything. The sisters, despite their hurt, couldn't ignore the bond they had always shared. They fought, they argued, they cried, and for the first time in years, they confronted everything they had buried under responsibilities and expectations. Sienna admitted she had always lived in Neria's shadow. Neria confessed she had always felt responsible for Sienna's happiness. They realized that Archer hadn't broken them, they had been breaking quietly for years, long before he ever walked into their lives. Days later, on a clear morning filled with the brightness of a new beginning, Sienna returned to the ranch. Not with hope, but with honesty. She told Archer she still loved him, but she wasn't ready for anything. She needed time to heal, time to rediscover herself beyond her feelings. She didn't want to lose her sister over a man, no matter how good he was. Her voice was calm, steady, mature in a way that made Archer admire her even more. A day after Sienna's visit, Neria appeared at the same spot. She didn't pretend everything was fine. She didn't pretend she wasn't hurt. But she stood strong, saying she wouldn't let love turn into bitterness. She reminded Archer that she valued her sister's happiness above her own, but she also valued her own heart too much to let it be swept under silence again. She needed boundaries, time, and clarity. Not promises. Archer realized that this was his chance to become the man he had always wanted to be, someone who didn't run, who didn't hide, who didn't let fear guide him. So he made the most difficult decision of his life, he stepped back. He told the sisters he wouldn't pursue either of them until they decided what they wanted. He wanted to build trust, not tension. He wanted their hearts to heal, not fracture. And he wanted them to choose freely, not out of pressure or fear. Weeks passed. The air grew cooler as autumn deepened, and the ranch slowly regained its rhythm. Sienna visited often, not for Archer but for the animals she loved. Neria came periodically for professional work, maintaining her distance with grace. Archer treated them with respect, patience, and unwavering sincerity. The tension faded into understanding. Understanding shifted into comfort. Comfort eventually grew into something hopeful. They began talking again, not about love, but about life. They shared meals, laughed again, worked together, healed the wounds that once felt impossible to mend. And through that healing, something extraordinary happened. Sienna discovered that her love for Archer was more admiration than destiny. She cherished him, but she realized she needed someone who matched her softness fully. Neria discovered that beneath her